Okay, I think I'm safe. What's up, gamers? Dreamcastguy here, and currently I am hiding in my closet because a bunch of monsters are trying to take over my apartment. So I figured that I could just kind of sit here in the dark and maybe they won't find me. Which I guess means that I have a couple minutes to kill. So let's talk about horror games, right? It's October. This is the spookiest time of the year, and really, this is actually one of my very favorite times because it's just so great to actually play scares that are going to terrify you and freak you out. But what's kind of weird to me is a lot of people don't seem to understand why it is that horror games as a genre are actually important, why they manage to push boundaries and change things and really challenge what is considered normal. There's a saying that's said a lot over the course of the last couple of years, which is that comedy is super vital to society because comedians can actually break down barriers with humor. They can say things that aren't allowed and really kind of change the way people view certain aspects of our world. Well, I actually believe that this is exactly the same reason why horror games are so necessary. This is about more than just jump scares. This is about more than just monsters that make your heart beat. This is about managing to do things different. Now, whenever you're playing a video game, you pick up the controller and typically it's pretty obvious what you're supposed to do. There's a set of rules and you obey them. If you're actually playing something like Crash Bandicoot, as soon as you see the start screen, typically you're immediately able to understand that you're playing as a furry little creature that's trying to duck, dive, and dash through a series of levels as quickly as possible and get some hidden items. This goes for pretty much every single game ever made, even things that happen to be gory and slightly spooky like Doom. Okay, yes, there are a bunch of gory monsters and crazy bloody kills, but still, this game right at the beginning gives you a gun and says, hey, all those demons hate bullets. It's still, on the surface, very simplistic. Horror is the one genre that is made to confuse you. It is made to actually challenge what you assume is correct. Let's actually look at a game very specifically that came out just a bit ago called The Evil Within. Now, in this game, we are actually playing as a detective who's trying to investigate a series of kills, but as soon as the game begins, you're immediately basically tricked. You're sent to places like an insane asylum or a creepy village or a mad scientist's lab, and occasionally throughout the game, you are physically thrown into new locations. It basically tells you, trust nothing, believe no one, and it creates a very great semblance of fear. It creates a sense that you must pass this test. Something a lot of humans have is we have this very deep innate sense to prove ourselves. We want to actually show that we're better than the rest. We actually want to try and show how far we can push ourselves. Most of the time this is done in a very realistic manner of if you don't actually pass the test or figure out the problem, you are literally ripped apart limb from limb. Something that happened this year that I really enjoyed watching, in 2019, one of the games that people consider to be perhaps the best game of the entire year was the Resident Evil 2 remake. It was exceptionally good with great graphics, good shadows, and, well, honestly great controls. But as somebody who beat the original version a million times and then the remake 20 times, to me, it was fascinating to watch how people reacted to Mr. X. There was a predominant monster that actually stalked you through the entire game and he could not be stopped. He was literally unkillable. If you shot him a couple times, he'd actually go down for a few seconds, but he would always get up and he'd always keep coming. The player base, though, became so fixated in fascination on this particular figure. The idea of a test that could not be passed, about a rule that was actually broken. Every other monster had a weakness. Every other creature had a way to be stopped, except for this singular one who would never stop, who would never take a break, who would never sleep. This deception is actually important. Video games are all about trying to push you to your limits, but more than that, I think that video games are about fun. They're about the excitement. They're about trying to figure out a new way to push you into a different direction. Video games, of course, are all about fun and excitement, but more than this, I actually think that games are supposed to make us think. They're supposed to make us really question what's around us. How can I play better? How can I be better? How can I actually pass this tumultuous thing in front of me? And I think that video games, well, all of them are great at this. I think that gaming in general just keeps getting bigger and better, despite the microtransactions, but I love seeing what game developers are constantly trying to come up with. Something that actually I played again recently that I really loved was Outlast 2. The first Outlast was very much terrifying because it was a horror game with no weapons. You had a camera, you had a couple batteries, and you had to try and survive escaping a giant insane asylum. But the second game, it actually goes a lot farther because you're basically trapped in a huge village of crazy religious psychopaths. And what was cool is that the game occasionally would pull you into this weird delusion where you were stuck in a giant school that was completely empty except for one monster that if it caught you would instantly kill you. And I like this because the game ended up managing to have this twofold aspect of terror. What you believe is real and what you believe is not. The hillbillies that want to rip you apart, they seem like they're very much there and in your face and they want to eat you. But the monsters on the other side, the delusion world, well, they're still managing to cut your throat. Where is the reality? Where is the illusion? Where is the part of this land that is actually safe? Oftentimes as we play these games that manage to be the most disgusting or degrading, the games that manage to have really horrible monsters that are gooey and dripping apart, they're scary, but simultaneously, I think that they really trip up this part of our brain that says, you're doing the right thing, you're pushing forward, you're managing to make it through this. It sort of reminds me of, there was this thing back in the medieval ages called trial by fire, where basically, if you were accused of a particularly terrible crime, you would actually have to physically walk through a open fire. And if you managed to do this barefoot, you were considered innocent. You were considered good enough to have passed the crime. You managed to survive the test. And I think that horror games sort of create that semblance. They make it where it seems like you are screwed. You cannot possibly progress even one more step through these fiery coals. But if you do it, it seems like you yourself have become improved by it. This is a huge reason why I think that the Silent Hill games were such an enormous success from the very start. Being Harry Mason and trying to track down your daughter in this big spooky city, that was fun. It's great. It's very haunting. But simultaneously, I think that it manages to really make you feel rewarded in a game that no other else thing is. You're managing to find your way through this area and draw on maps and actually figure out these very complicated problems to a great reward. You are managing to do what nobody else is. Whenever you beat a horror game, sometimes it can really feel like you were the first person ever to actually conquer that boss or managing to save that last bullet. Fear is important. Terror is a very valid part of our brains. Getting to have that pulse-pounding excitement is something that can make us feel alive even as our character dies. I'm glad that we're sort of in this renaissance of horror. A lot of people are really kind of talking about how there's this new thing that's going on. Maybe it's just the rise of YouTube or the fact that people are really kind of being more open-minded about weirder stuff, but I love to see all the indie games coming out and the AAA scares and all the cool stuff that's coming out that's actually here just to give you nightmares. I really wish that we'd actually seen Silent Hills because that little hallway we got, the tiniest little playable teaser we got, sort of paints the picture that horror can continue to change. As time goes on, this genre manages to warp what is considered right more than anything else. I think that going forward, we can definitely predict that shooters are going to become more fun, they're going to have more microtransactions, they're going to have better multiplayer. RPGs are going to get longer. The open world stuff is going to have better graphics. But horror, who knows what's really coming next? I want you to do me a giant favor. In the comments down below, tell me your very favorite horror game, because I actually want to play a ton of them. Now, I've already played a bunch, but I want to see what you guys love, because if I haven't heard of it, I'm definitely going to pick it up. You guys rock. Thank you for watching this very hyped rant, and hopefully the monsters don't kill me when I open up this closet. Thanks so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all, and keep dreaming. Alright. Obviously, I filmed this video as a big joke, but for some reason I've been filming in this closet for so long, I was legitimately nervous when I opened that door. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.